Hello and welcome to Business Reporter's The Future of Financial Services and Banking campaign. I'm Ashley Blake. How much do cross-border payments really cost? How much do e-commerce or manufacturing companies spend just to manage and process these payments? Many business owners and C-level executives see settling invoices and paying suppliers in other countries and other currencies as below their pay grade. In any case, they're unlikely to be familiar with the process, one where intermediaries will often demand a cut. There are other costs as well, like the risk of fraud or the administrative burden that comes with complex payment processes. The experts from payment platform Reach believe that international transactions should be simpler, cheaper and safer. Companies should be able to stay local but trade globally. To find out how, we're talking to Sam Ranieri, CEO of Reach. Okay, Sam, let's imagine that I'm the chief buyer of an IT, hardware and electronics manufacturer in Canada. I'm buying sophisticated chips and motherboards from Europe or Southeast Asia. What is the cost of currency conversion and transactions, and how much can I cut out from that?
So if you're a buyer in Canada, generally speaking, the European vendor would probably be sending you an invoice in euro dollars, right? So you in Canada are denominated in Canadian dollars, and you're going to need to pay that in euros. At that point, that Canadian transaction going into Europe is a cross-border transaction, and basically you get three banks in the middle taking an FX spread. There's an acquiring bank, so that's the bank that's on the side in Europe. There's an issuing bank from the cardholder in Canada, and then there's a processor in the middle. Generally speaking, that spread equals about 2.5%. That's the average in the space. Not to mention the actual processing of the payment. It's a cross-border transaction, so you're basically bound by the interchange, which is basically like a mortgage rate of where the vendor is. So European interchange pricing in Canada. So as you can imagine, it gets pretty expensive as you go through the natural rails of a cross-border way of paying that bill.
So what's the solution? How does Reach bring about change?
So Reach is a global financial platform that's built a hosted checkout that includes all of the complexities around the world integrated through our platform. We do this through our merchant of record model that localizes the transaction and essentially removes the border from the cross-border.
Okay, so how are you able to localize the transaction?
So the financial transaction is localized through one of Reach's local entities, and we act as MOR in the payment flow. What that affords us is the ability to use a local bank with our local entity and get local interchange rates, which obviously drop the cost substantially. And what that means is that we're actually transacting directly with the end user on behalf of the merchant as the merchant of record.
So what sets Reach apart from its competitors?
There's a lot of tech companies out there that are trying to solve, again, one small piece with technology. We consider ourselves more of a financial company that are solving those problems with technology. And that's an important distinction between us and sort of other sort of fintechs in the space. We're combining an FX solution, local interchange and local acquiring solution, all of the features that are required globally to access international users, and we've bundled it all up into one platform that's accessible to merchants through one integration. So the cost savings here for the merchant is really around sort of internally and resourcing on how they're going to integrate multiple solutions versus one solution. And then we also save the merchant or business on interchange fees. By localizing, we're able to pass that on to the business. The other place where savings occur is through the FX. So because we're direct to market, we're coming in much lower than if there are three different banks in the middle taking spread along the way.
Okay, so I'm a business. How do I access your solution?
First way is through an API integration. This is generally for businesses that have tech teams, have hosted payment pages, and they're really just trying to add on and partner with Reach to access more markets. They can do this through an API, direct API integration. The second way, and the reason why we built this, was that resources are quite thin in the space right now, and people were looking for fast ways to access global markets. So we built a product called Drop-In, which is a very low-code way of integrating. We've basically done a lot of the heavy lifting on our end so that the end user can spend less time integrating our solution. This is for businesses maybe in the mid-tier. They have developers on staff, but they're looking for a sort of a more out-of-the-box way to connect to us.
We've had an interesting insight into global or international payments. I'm a small company and I'm sort of just dipping my toe into this arena. What advice would you give to me?
Yeah, so the advice is like, the amount of services and solutions that are available out there is overwhelming. Really, the advice to a vendor or a business going international, they have to understand that as soon as you're putting a border between you and the shopper, you're basically going through a default and very expensive, complex way of paying things. The best practice is to localize that transaction, localize all of the features and components to where your user is. Now, the way you do that gets expensive. Obviously, setting up entities around the world is not the cheapest and fastest thing, especially setting up banking channels. That's not easy. The advice is really work back from sort of what the best practice is, what you're trying to achieve, and then either sort of choose the right vendors in between, or I'm a little bit biased and I would say just outsource it all to Reach.
Sam Ranieri, CEO of Reach.